It's lifespan and health span. So the lifespan is the number of years, the health span is the number of lucky good years, I would say, on Earth. So for me as a person, it already made sense when I became a geriatrician, internal medicine specialist, that I would like to prevent age-related diseases. Why would I love to have them? Because I know that they will interfere with my functioning. And many people also think so. Not if you're asking a group of people who wants to have a disease, who wants to be dependent, nobody says yes. I think what happened is that we are expecting and accepting that at a certain point in life we have age-related diseases, and that's what we try to antagonize. We find it normal that we have more wrinkles, for example. We lose muscle mass. We are slower in terms of our walking. We are hugely slower in terms of our thinking. And I'm not sure how much you memorize, but once you are older, it's much, much less. And we would not do that with other devices, for example, we have in our life. Very often we buy a new laptop or a new computer and we are caring for them. And at a certain stage you say, okay, too old, too slow. And what we then do, we buy something new, but we cannot do that. We cannot buy a new brain. We cannot buy a new body. So we really have to take care of it. So how do we make sure that the software and the hardware of our body is so nicely being maintained that we can use the sort of computer as long as we can? And that's what we try to achieve. So be very careful with this precious body you have, because you only have one. We now understand why we age, and it started a little bit with Hayflick. Leonard Hayflick discovered that if you're taking a cell, you're putting them into the lab, into a petri dish, that this cell can only replicate a couple of times, and then it's over, and then the cell really changes in terms of morphology. And there, really, the basis was like for cellular senescence research. So a little bit the zombie cells everybody has in their body. And if you have more, you are more likely to have age-related diseases, and you're also likely to be older. So cellular senescence, so cells which cannot replicate anymore, is just one of the 12 pillars we now understand. Think about your genome, so the genes you got from your parents. The genes are not per se wrong, but can have a higher chance that somebody has diabetes or other age-related diseases. But these genes also make mistakes while being replicated. So we have DNA breaks, we have changes on the DNA that we cannot read it properly anymore. So whatever we do therewith is being influenced negatively. Our proteins, which we have in our body, are misfolded. So we do not really package everything anymore nicely. We have lots of inflammation. We should have inflammation if we have a COVID infection or something else, but not normally in our body, and that occurs when we are aging. So, in conclusion, really, we understood in the past 10 years what's happening. We can now measure it, and why not doing something about it? The most important factor in metabolism is glucose, I would say, but also do not forget hormone levels, etc. In the end, everything in our body is metabolism, because everything communicates with each other, which is beautiful. But one of the mechanisms we really understand is the sugar level in our blood, in our body, so glucose. And we eat food, and with the food, we are having higher glucose levels. And while having higher glucose levels, we also need our pancreas to then excrete, for example, insulin. So there needs to be a feedback loop. You already see that we are now, from one molecule, sugar, we are now building a story, because the story doesn't end with insulin, but we also need the liver and we need the muscle. So everything is talking to each other. So, but imagine that just eating food, it's in our hands how much sugar we actually release out of the food, which actually ends up then in our bloodstream. So sugar levels should be down, and the variability of the sugar level should also be down. And now we have measurement devices like continuous glucose monitoring systems. So you can place a sort of butterfly on your belly or on the arm, and then you can measure glucose levels continuously. So think about the experiment if eating habits bring certain glucose levels, and there was lots of consequences. Could you actually measure that? And now we can measure it. So if somebody eats, for example, first rice or pasta or lots of sugar or fruit, we can actually measure how that body reacts. So therewith, we can change the diet, making sure that the glucose level is lower and the variation is also lower, because you and me and others, we have all different actions and reactions to that food with regards to our metabolism, our glucose level. So this is how we, while just talking about food, really influencing the aging process in our body. And that's super exciting because we can measure it, it's actionable, and we have a better outcome. Really focus while aging on endurance training and on resistance exercise training, but also on balance training, on double tasking, so having one task plus the other to really also train our brain. So physical activity, it really is. Doesn't mean that everybody has to be a top sporter, but at least 8,000 steps should be great and would be great. Top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is that. And how to integrate it into our lives is, I think, most important. But then also diet, sleep, stress management is very important. One advice is measure your weight and be not overweight, full stop. How you reach it is a different question. So we know that intermittent fasting is a very good weight loss intervention, but then maintaining that weight is very important. If you are putting people from a normal diet to an intermittent fasting diet, people who have a little bit more weight will lose weight, and there are metabolic changes which are positive. However, on the long term, we do not know what kind of influence it has. Caloric restriction is also important. So most of the times humans eat too much. There's lots of evidence that if we're eating lesser than we would like to eat, that's absolutely positive. And there are longer term studies, especially also in primates, showcasing that it has an additional health span effect, and that's most important. So it's more about, I would say, the quantity rather than the timing, and it's more the quality rather than the timing. But most importantly, some people react super positively. You can measure it now because you can measure the weight, you can measure your mood, and you can measure the glucose level. So experiment a little bit with physicians, with yourself, to see what your best lifestyle approach is. So epigenetic is nothing else than you have your genes and the methylation sites, or a differentiation in the genome. Or what we then know now is that you can switch your genes on and off, and we can measure which switches are on and off. And many, including our group, build clocks, so we can measure how good the epigenome, not the microbiome, the epigenome is. And therewith we can measure it. We also know with lifestyle interventions that we can change the epigenome positively, which could be a marker therewith that it works. We are implementing epigenetic analysis in clinical practice because we now understand how to use it. However, most importantly, especially physicians in the audience or people who are very interested in their own health, I would rather choose for measuring physical activity, temperature, heart rate, glucose levels, than spending money on epigenetics. It's an additional test, but the basic things, as mentioned just before, including also a blood pressure, etc., should be done first. Just thinking about the cognitive capacity, that's how well our computer is functioning, how fast it is, and if there are no mistakes. The mental well-being is how if we love life. So these are two different points. We already know that if we have our heart, our lungs, and our muscles healthy, that's very likely that our brain is also healthier. So all the lifestyle advice, we know what's working for cardiovascular disease, for diabetes, also holds for the brain. Brain function decline starts very early at the age of 20 to 30. We can recognize it. And then at the age of 40, 50, it becomes apparent. So why not training the brain to be more mentally, there was also active and able to be active. And then the mental capacity, the well-being is very important, because if you don't have a purpose in life and if you don't love life, like why would you maintain your body? So it's really the cognitive and the physical capacity being the basis, and then you can see what you do with it. I don't say that people who are disabled cannot love life, absolutely not. But having a functioning, well-functioning brain and body, I think everybody wants, and then you can see if you enjoy what you do. Me, it's absolutely not prime time for clinical implementation yet. If you're talking about gene therapies or stem cell therapies or exosome therapies or whatever, because we are missing validation in humans that it actually works. And I only want to include anything in clinical practice if I have the evidence that it works. So why would you put your money in something where you have no clue? And I can tell you, everybody feels better spending money on themselves, getting therapies and feeling better, because this is the placebo effect. So we really have to now conduct studies where we know what works in whom. So no prime time yet, and hopefully we'll see the randomized controlled trials and the bigger studies to actually showcase what it works. But is there, in essence, in theoretical essence, a niche for these therapies? Absolutely, because we know that stem cells are declining with chronological age. Great. Why wouldn't you infuse them? Why wouldn't you replicate them? It all makes sense. But if it makes sense, it doesn't mean that it works. So that's the next step. I think it's hugely embedded in precision medicine. That's also the reason why we are choosing the word precision geromedicine, so aging medicine, and then in a precise way. So our fingerprint in terms of the aging process is very differently. And so you, me, and especially also within me, my organs are all aging very differently. So while having that dashboard we are creating to really see, okay, how is my cognitive, lung, brain, eye, vision, there is function, is so important. And then we can see, okay, what kind of targeted treatments do we need based on the mechanisms we find which are disturbed? And that's the future. And if this is a supplement, or it's food, eating more broccoli, or is it stem cell infusions, we will see all of them, all which I mentioned, might have capacity. It depends on customers to eat either the food or taking supplements. But this precision approach is most important and very inspiring and exciting. We should celebrate that somebody is already aged. And I think ageism is the worst you can have. It's ageism from both fronts. So if you're too young or too old, like, it depends always on the perception. And most of the times governments of middle-aged or a little bit older individuals, but not very, very old and not very, very young. So what we really have to learn is how we harmonize our thoughts around it, and making sure that we celebrate that we have a huge amount of excellent healthcare systems, that we actually grow old. Because if we would shut down the healthcare systems at this moment in time, we would have a lesser life expectancy of 10, 15 years. Think about type 1 diabetics not getting insulin, like, will not last long. So I think we should celebrate. It's our creation that we have old people, and we have very old people with many age-related diseases. So it's just a consequence of what we did. So it's our choice. It was already our choice. And now we have to deal with, okay, how can we even optimize it? So I would not close down the current healthcare system. Absolutely not. Don't take it wrong. But now adding another layer and understanding, hey, we cannot just accumulate all the age-related diseases and the functional decline, but can we prevent it? But most importantly is having that ethical norm that there is no ageism is of importance. Oh, take action now to know yourself. Look, I'm coming out of 2 decades of research, and we did not know what to do with it. I think love yourself, love your body, only recognize that you only have one. Get to know what kind of ingredients you have in your computer, software and hardware, and start with that. And then you say, should have chosen my parents wisely or more wisely, or my husband or my job or whatever. So you can make choices. So I think the first step is, who are you now? Are you happy with that? Can you make anything work, change to be even more happier, better, etc.? So and interventions will come with pills, etc., but we can do so much that we can extend healthy life expectancy by easily 6 to 10 years in our populations we study. So yeah, it's up to you if you take it or leave it.